Third part. As Resden looked over his shoulder, his right hand struck the ground. A power invisible to the human eye shot through the earth. It was an instant later that the colossal tree towering before him toppled on its side. By the thick roots that had ripped free of the ground, there were indications that someone had been startled. Still, nothing but darkness took shape, yet Resden grinned. Surprised. I don't know who the hell you are, but anyone who stands in the way of love deserves to be roasted to death by a fire dragon. You can either get out of here without any more trouble, or have every bit of meat stripped from your bones. That sounds intriguing, a youthful male voice responded. It was so lovely, it made the eyes of both Resden and the girl go wide. I saw your prowess in that town earlier. You are a hunter of nobility, are you not? Tension filled every inch of Resden's body with the urge to fight. In a split second, he knew the true nature of the speaker. So you're a noble. One of Grand Duke Zeno's clan, I take it. I am Zeno Gillian, and the Grand Duke was my father. The first response, made after time enough to process these words, was a scream from the woman. Falling flat on her behind, she scrambled madly in an attempt to back away. She was driven to do so out of fear for her very soul. Catching her crazed activity with his peripheral vision, Resden showed his teeth in a laugh. And then, hugging his arms around himself, he said, "Oh, I'm trembling to the core. Never thought I'd run into such a big fish right from the get-go, you see. And I'm gonna land you for sure." He was looking forward. However, all that lay there were darkness and a moonlit stand of trees, where quiet was settling once more. Where was the source of the voice, Zeno Gillian? And why was Resden keeping his composure so well? Legend has it your parents got destroyed, but you managed to survive, eh? I hear there were some noble hunters in the mob that stormed the castle. You didn't run into any of them. Well, you were one lucky SOB. But here's where it runs out. You certainly don't lack confidence, human, came the voice of the noble. It rang from the heavens. It echoed from the depths of the earth. But can you see me? Without seeing me, how are you to slay me? Oh, you're right there, Resden said with a nod. I can't see a damn thing. At least not with my eyes. But my power, that can see. What did he mean by that? Resden raised his right foot, then brought it down as hard as he could. A dull whomp was heard in the woods. At the same time, a massive shock shook heaven and earth. Each and every tree fell at length. Not only that, but when they hit the ground, the bark tore off them. Their trunks came apart. To be precise, they went to pieces. In the same way, these ultra-intense vibrations would shake flesh from the bone, or concrete from steel-reinforcing rods. The split ground swallowed up the fallen trees. Who could have imagined cracks in the earth swallowing the whole woods? From the woods that were breaking to bits that dropped straight down like a demolished building instead of trees, there came a second like birds' wings flapping. Serpentine bodies resembling vines writhed as they fell, and simian figures tried in vain to jump only to find empty air. And in no time the rumbling had departed heaven and earth alike, leaving the moonlight to shine on a massive depression more than a mile wide, and Resden, who stood on the brink of it, and roared with laughter. What do you think? Not even a noble can defy Mother Nature's wrath. Spending the rest of your eternal life 30 miles underground is part of your noble privilege. Reston laughed at the ground at his feet. The girl slumped weakly. Her face's pallor not entirely due to the moonlight. She looked up at him with terror in her eyes, her mouth hanging open. How about that? Did you think I was just an ordinary noble hunter? If you were surprised, you can tell me about it later, sweetie. An electric jolt raced down Resident's spine. The girl wasn't looking at him. At what, then? Even before he looked, he knew. The silhouetted form of Zeno Gillian stood there casually, and Reston pressed his hand to the nobleman's shoulder. Gillian's form grew blurry. You're a lucky man to get to experience my power close up and personal. Now watch real close as noble flesh gets stripped from noble bones. Reston's last remark was directed toward the girl. The ultra-intense vibrations his hands gave off were especially to be feared. But what should happen at that moment? But the nobleman's blurry arm stretched out toward Reston. At that instant, Reston's body also became a foggy blur. The intense vibrations that could split the earth were now coursing through him. Flesh fell from his gigantic frame, and the bloody bones too were destroyed in an instant. Unable to shut her eyes, the girl could only watch it happen. She didn't even have enough presence of mind left to realize it was due to the very same phenomenon Reston had caused. From a mouth agape like a cavern, a single panicked syllable continued to escape. In response to her endless cry, the young nobleman told the woman softly, I shan't kill you. Be at ease. You yet have a role to play. However, that is only after you've been made my servant, body and soul. His eyes, red and blazing with light, had drained the woman of even her fear. Page break. There are roads even in the wilderness, roads taken by monsters and demonic beasts, roads traveled by humans and wagons, and still others. The transparent white tube disappeared at the horizon. More than 100 yards in diameter, it ran through towers and a building twice that high. The building had an area of nearly 4 square miles. Who would have imagined that, despite having enough space to build a city, it was simply a train station? One of the great mysteries of the noble mind was their nightmarish sense of scale. The lower part of a tower that touched the very heavens contained a 2-mile-long home platform. A heavy stillness hung over it. But for the first time in 5 millennia, part of the platform rang with furtive sounds. The sound of hoofbeats. Astride his cyborg horse, Dee was bathed in the afternoon light that poured through the roof of the platform ceiling. They're strange ones, the hoarse voice said. Even though they knew daylight was the death of them, their buildings are bolder in their use of natural light than humans. It's almost like they wish to be destroyed. Dee's words had surely caught his left hand off guard. The hoarse voice was clearly shaken when it next stammered, That's right. There's a bunch of evidence that can only be taken as the light-hating people of the night actually loving light. Countless paintings, seemingly purposeless openings in the walls of their mansions, the excessive dedication their scientists showed in their research on daytime, the adoration of light, so often discussed at balls, that have finally developed into a whole philosophy. At the very end, the voice had regained its customary sarcasm and composure. That may be, The platform was vast, a facility in the land of the dead, with not a human figure anywhere. Light may have filled the emptiness, but it remained light all the same. And through the gorgeous darkness known as D rode onward in silence. A train, moving through a tube over 100 yards in diameter. They sure have thought of some crazy stuff. Plus, the only passenger was the unknown noble who built this place. Must have been one real empty trip, eh? In addition to the vaguely glum words of the hoarse voice, D could hear another faint sound. Something flat and insect-like glided across the 1,000-foot wide floor of the platform, a cleaning robot. Although the identity of the noble who'd created the tube train was still a mystery, various legends about him remained. One was that he was inordinately concerned with cleanliness, with some going so far as to say he had a phobia about dirt. The station, an opulent hotel that would never host any guests save the nobility, power plants, and more were all sealed off from contact with the air outside, while all the air inside would periodically be replaced. All of these were given his own personal property. And the fact no thought had been given to their preservation or use by anyone else after he was gone only served as commentary on the dark nature of the noble psyche.
I thought once we were here it'd be a leisurely ride over to the eastern frontier sectors, but since the castle ain't here, there's not much we can do. Let's hit the road.
Not replying to the hoarse voice, D gave a light kick to his steed's flanks. Cantering down the corridor and galloping up a staircase, D came to an enormous doorway. Turning his horse parallel to it, the hunter put his hand against the surface of the doors. The sound of a lock unfastening rang out, and the doors began to magically swing to either side. Even after D had slipped through the opening, they still didn't stop. The doors themselves were 15 feet thick. A white cylinder alone loomed modestly in air, nearly at the freezing point. 30 feet in height, it was set in a room covering about 10 million square feet, and with a ceiling more than 300 feet high, where it looked like a humble artifact.
The control room, said the hoarse voice. Though actually, there's just the one control system computer. And, by the look of things, that handled everything from driving the train to maintaining the station.
And still handles them. Dismounting, D walked toward the tower. Something like a terribly dangerous intent was focused on every inch of him. The pendant at his chest began to give off a bluish glow, and the device's ill intent vanished, as if they'd been a dream. On reaching the base of the tower, D placed his left hand against its smooth surface. Though he didn't hear it, at that very moment something awakened out in the distant wilderness. Energy flowed through a nerve center that had been dormant for 5 millennia, spreading throughout its steel body in the blink of an eye. Without a sound, the massive shape resting at the bottom of the tube floated upward. Chapter 5, End.